I was talking with my mom one night, who is 92 years old, and she was about 89 when we were having this conversation, and we were talking about books, as one does.
Hmm.
And, the feminine mystique came up in the conversation, and she said, I don't know if I ever told you, but that book changed my life. And I said, You did not tell me. I would like you to tell me now. And so she started talking. And as soon as she started talking, I knew what I had to write next.
Welcome, everybody, to tonight's video book club. Our special guest tonight is the amazing, beautiful owner of Showgirl, Marie Bostwick.
It's true. It's true. She's much more attractive than I am.
I don't know. I sort of think that you kind of look alike. I think you
We
were
do
one of
have,
those.
yeah, no, we have similar hairdos. And for those of you who don't know, Showgirl is my Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. So
And if anybody visits Marie's website, which is a blog, it's really cool. And sh Showgirl shows up constantly in the pictures.
she
So
does.
she does. So you're very proud, and she's very proud. And I could just see her tossing her hair a
There is
little
a lot
bit.
of hair tossing, also a lot of drama. I mean, you don't even have to, like, she'll squeak and yelp for no discernible reason. It'd be like, no one touched you, but you got close to maybe you were going to touch me. So yelp.
Yeah, they're special, the dogs
They
in
are
our life.
special.
It's
Yes.
special. When our kids grow up and go away, well, then we have to replace them with dogs. It's
Well,
just the way.
she's the daughter we never had. So
There you go.
yeah.
That's okay. That works too. All right. Well, let me introduce you to everybody. I just want to say that Marie Bostwick is usually found in her office trying to write a book. And if she's not in her office trying to write a book, she's reading one, which we find nothing wrong with that at
No,
all.
not a thing. Mm-mm.
Yeah. And she is a New York Times and USA Today bestselling author of over 20 uplifting works of history, of historical and contemporary fiction. And they're loved by readers all across the globe. And they're beloved by readers here in Texas. I just want to say
Thank you.
I have loved your books for years. I love your historicals, the historical romances that you did, starting with the air flyers, the female air flyers, which I still think are just fabulous books. And I think that they need more people reading them. So I don't know what you're going to do, but get it out there because I
I
keep,
believe me, I have tried, it was the timing was not right on those books.
I know, but they're still available. So people should
It's
be
true.
reading them now. They should
Yeah,
be reading
no,
them
it's
now.
true. And the book that you are talking about is called On Wings of the Morning.
Yes. It is, and it's just fabulous. It's just
Thank you.
fabulous, really.
Thank you.
And I do recommend that to people who want to read about women during World War II, like pre-World War II, the pilots and how they did not get the respect that they deserved. Just saying for
Mm,
the record. Just saying for the
mm.
record.
They did not.
Anyway, she's also a quilter of amazingness, and she wrote a series called the Cobbled Court Quilt series. And when she would come to visit, I would take her around to quilt stores.
It's true.
It was fun. It was a lot of
Yes.
fun.
Yes.
And you still do quilting. And when you came to visit with us in person a couple of times, you always brought a quilt with you and described how to do it and everything. And I just really honor that because I can't sew worth a stitch. It's not going to happen.
I think I could fix that if you were open to it, but you have to be excited about doing it.
You
I
notice
remember
the
there was
frown.
the one Readers and Readers where I actually taught people to make I did a workshop. I did a crafting
Yes.
workshop, and it was so much fun. And we did, a quilt block by hand, and because we didn't have sewing machines. And I always remember this one girl, she was like, "Look, I made a thing." She was
Yes, I
so
remember.
excited. She was very
And
excited.
I actually have my quilt square behind me. It's here all the time. I
Do you
keep
have
it.
it still?
Yes,
That's
of course I still
amazing.
have it. And
That's
I do not, and
wonderful.
anything, I do not use it for a pot holder. I do not use it to put anything that's messy on it.
Okay,
It's just pretty, you know?
that's
And one
good.
time I put a vase on it and the flowers started to fall off.
Oh.
And I got all upset and I was like, oh, well, I have to find a place on the wall to put it, because I do have quilts on walls. So that's where I put my museum quality quilts. So yeah,
I am.
quilts are
I am.
important, but I just can't do it myself. And
Okay.
yes, we hand stitched that by hand, the whole thing without a
Yeah.
sewing machine.
Yeah.
It was hard. Took us like a couple of hours, but it was fun. We made a square. I think it was like 12 inches by
Right.
8 inches.
That's right.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
good. Okay, so let's talk about your current. There's a lot of things to say about you, including one of your books was made into a Hallmark movie,
Hmm.
and that was really fabulous. The novel was called The Second Sister. It was made into the movie called Christmas Everlasting, and it had Patti LaBelle in it, which
Hmm.
was really fabulous. And I'm sure it's going to be on this fall if people want to look out for that on the Hallmark
Actually, I
Channel.
think it's even on Prime right now if you looked for it.
There you go. Okay, so people should be
Because
looking
my husband
for.
brought it up the other night and he was like, "Hey, should we watch this?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Well, we kind of know how this goes."
Okay, but it's called Christmas Everlasting, and it
Yes.
has Patti LaBelle in it, and it's really great. It's a great movie, and people should watch it. Your latest book is The Book Club for Troublesome Women. And I just want to say, as I was reading it, it brought back so many. It's set in the 1960s, 63, 64, 63.
1963.
Yeah. And it brought back so many memories. Now, I was like in second grade in 1963, but
Mhm.
I went to college and high school in the late 60s and 70s. And I read the Feminine Mystique and other books that were like that. And the whole thing, because I grew up in the time of period where during when I was in college, we got birth control. We got to be able to have credit cards that we couldn't.
1974.
Yeah, we couldn't do that before. I could have a checking account in my own name without my father.
Right?
Um, there were so many things that happened then that
Mhm.
reading this book that even took place like 10 years before that was just fascinating to me. So my first question is, when did you read The Feminine Mystique?
Not until I started working on this book.
Are you kidding me?
No, I mean, I'm a little younger than you. So
Yeah.
I was alive when The Feminine Mystique came out, but only just. So I knew of it, but I had not read it, and I think that that's not an uncommon thing. And the whole reason this book came about is because I was talking with my mom one night, who is 92 years old, and she was about 89 when we were having this conversation, and we were talking about books, as one does.
Hmm.
And the feminine mystique came up in the conversation, and she said, "I don't know if I ever told you, but that book changed my life." And I said, "You did not tell me. I would like you to tell me now." And so she started talking. And as soon as she started talking, I knew what I had to write next. I had to write a book about a group of homemakers who form a book club. And the first book they read of many in this story is The Feminine Mystique, and it changes everything.
Yeah.
So, so one of the first things though I did after getting this idea was to read The Feminine Mystique. Now I've read it about 6 times, for research.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those books that you read it and then you reread it and then you reread parts of it and then you go back and read it after you've experienced a little bit and you're like, oh
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of my questions was going to be is you dedicated the book to your mother.
Mhm.
So what is it that inspired her? You said it changed her life. So how did it change her life?
I think it just, talking to her about this, and I talked to her quite a bit, was the biggest thing is it let her know that there wasn't anything wrong with her. I mean, that was huge.
Mm.
And, there's another book I read for research, which was just um, incredibly important for my research process. And it was called A Strange Stirring by a woman named Stephanie Coons. And it talked about women's responses to the feminine mystique and the general response to it as well. And so I read a lot of, first hand essay accounts from people, and my mom's response was very normal, because there were all these women who are kind of looking around and saying, okay, I have everything that society says is supposed to make me feel fulfilled. The husband, the kids, the station wagon, the house, and the burbs. So why am I not fulfilled? There must be something wrong with me. And by the way, there were all kinds of people out there to tell them, yeah, no, there must be something wrong with you. There was something called housewife syndrome. And if you went to your doctor back in the day and complained of malaise, depression, whatever, he might be like, oh, don't worry, it's just housewife syndrome, and we've got a pill for that. And
Yeah.
so, my mother was of that generation, and reading this book for her was like, oh my gosh, there's nothing wrong with me, and I'm not alone. And that was hugely important. The very first page of the book, do you mind if I do this? I don't normally do this, but I
No, go
think it's
ahead.
important. The very, very first page of the book, before the story even starts, says this. On February 19th, 1963, a troublesome, imperfect, controversial woman named Betty Friedan published a troublesome, imperfect, controversial book titled The Feminine Mystique. The book didn't solve the problem, but it did put a name to it, shining a light that helped women who felt isolated and powerless to find one another and their voices. That has been the start of every revolution. And, when my mom finished reading that book, she was like, she thought, oh my God, there's going to be a revolution. And, I mean, and there kind of was. I mean, it was a slow burn revolution, and it was different for different people. It wasn't like women were suddenly in the streets with, pitchforks and torches. Um, but it changed a lot of things. And, and there were other things too, but the feminine mystique was certainly has been credited by many as really being an important catalyst for second wave feminism.
Yeah. 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 It wasn't until the 70s that they started burning their bras.
Yeah, there was other things. And there was a lot of, I mean, and I think some of that stuff too was general societal discontent with Vietnam. It all kind of gets mashed
Yeah.
up, right? But early on, there's this other thing. Oh, and just because I hate people who use words and then don't define them. First wave feminism is like, was women getting the vote. It's like women's suffrage.
Mhm.
Second wave feminism is what starts in the 60s, and it's the stuff that comes after that. So that's what first and second wave feminism.
Okay. So now we just had our history lesson. I love it.
I don't like it when people use words and then don't define them.
Yeah. We could talk about there's a wave in between where we have birth control that started and went on with Sager the whole way through to, we're not here to do
Well,
this.
but second wave feminism goes on for a long time, right?
Yes, it
I
does.
mean, it's not
Yes.
like a year. It's not like, women's suffrage comes in 1920, boom.
Yeah, but
But
they started it in 1820s.
yeah,
It took
18,
a hundred. Oh,
it was
yeah.
actually, I think, in Seneca in 1870 something.
No,
Seneca,
it was
New
it
York.
was before that. It was before the Civil War. It was all that. You need to listen to, oh, never mind. There's a whole bunch of
There's,
them that
well,
started.
England, they were doing more things, but there was
Yes, they were.
Central Falls, New York, when Elizabeth Cady Stanton, anyway, there was a big conference. It was a thing.
Yes, it was a thing. Yes. And yeah, and it's something that people should go back and look at as well. Okay. So there are four main characters in this book who are the book club members. Which of those is closest to you?
It's so funny that people keep asking me this question. And the truth is, there isn't one that's closest to me. I mean, there are pieces of me in maybe all of them in some
Okay.
in some sense. Um, so yeah, I don't know. It's always so funny because I think there is this belief among people that writers are writing themselves. And man, if that was true, I'd have run out of material like 15 years ago, right? So I invent these people, but of course, at the same time, as a writer, you always see the world and your characters through your own lens, of your
Hmm.
experience and values and all the things. I mean, you can't help but do that. That's just, there's no way not to do that, really, I don't think. So, I do, I, I, I have a place in my heart for Charlotte that's very special. Although, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, this is my mother. Hang on, I'm going to tell her I'll be right back later. Maggie, I'm doing a book club and was just saying nice things about you. I'm doing it on video and I'll call you later. Okay, love you. Bye. I forgot to do the do not disturb.
That's okay because one of the questions I was going to be, is your mother any of the characters?
No, no, no. These characters are pretty well sprung from my imagination. I love Charlotte. I mean, I loved writing all of them, but I really like Charlotte because Charlotte is a pot stirrer, and I do
Well,
love
she
a pot
was.
stirrer. Yeah, I like a pot stirrer, and she is. And she is the one who kind of says the things you're not supposed to and does the things you're not supposed to. So I appreciate that. Um, and I appreciate the fact that but also Margaret, these are women who have an artistic itch to scratch. So that's something I certainly identify with.
And I liked Viv because the whole thing of her still having 6 children, pregnant again, could not get birth control because her husband had to come and sign it. That just made me mad. When I read it,
Oh, it
I was
made so
like,
many people mad. Yeah. I mean, I went on an early version, and it's something that so many people just didn't really know about. And I do want to say, and I make it clear in the back of the book, what a woman was dealing with, the roadblocks or obstacles she was running up against in that period really could vary greatly just depending on where she lived. So it was different in different places. And some of these things might be might be actual laws or legal things or the lack of laws, but some of them might just be like traditions. I mean, how many times have we been to a doctor's office and they want you to do something dumb and they're like, "Well, I don't want to do that." And they're like, "Well, it's our policy." And I think back in the day, women were more likely to go, "Oh, well, it's our policy." And, I had a doctor do that to me years ago. I was in my 20s and I had run out of my birth control pills. And so I went to get the prescription filled, and the pharmacy said, "Oh, your prescription's out. You have to call the doctor." I was like, "Oh, somebody messed up." So I called the doctor. And they're like, "Oh, no, you have to come in again." And I was like, "I just saw you 6 months ago." "Well, it's our policy that you should come in every 6 months." I'm like, "Why?" "Well, so the doctor can, you can weigh you and measure you, and the doctor can, talk to you." And I said, "I weigh the same as I weighed 6 months ago. I'm not any taller or shorter. And if I want to talk about my problems, I'll call my priest." And they were like, "Well, it's our policy." And I said, "Well, it's my policy not to pay for doctor appointments I don't need. Prepare my chart. I'm coming to get it." So, that person, because policy, was trying to
Mhm.
stand in the way of me getting what I needed to get. Now, it was much easier. I could go do things like that. But so some of it was just attitudes and policy, and people didn't push back against things. And some of it was actual law, and it was very different from state to state. I'm sorry, I was blathering a bit there. Just rein me in when I
Yes, well, that's
start.
okay because this is all about troublesome women. So you're just living up to your book title. I think that that's great. Okay, so are any of okay, the other thing is that what is the most courageous thing that you either put in the book or you learned that you didn't get a chance to put in the book about what a woman did in the 1960s
Mm,
that should have been in this book?
mm. That's such an interesting question. I'd have to think really hard about that. I mean, honestly, in a way, the fact that Betty Friedan wrote the book to begin with was pretty courageous. She certainly got a great deal of criticism, for it then and later too. And we could talk about that. So that was certainly a very, very courageous thing. And as far as, see, I can only think about the courageous things that were in the book.
Okay,
And
so pick one of the most that was personal to you that you felt was courageous. You wanted to put in the book because you wanted to share that with us readers.
I think Charlotte finally
Okay.
standing up for herself, finally taking the chance. Now, there were some circumstances that came her way that made it possible for that to happen, but I think that was a very courageous thing, a really courageous thing. Um, and and all of them have moments of courage,
They
actually.
did. They did.
Yeah, and I really liked that they all had a moment to be courageous. And what I also love about this book is that at some point, these women all rescue each other, which is what I think that's what we do when we're our best selves.
Yeah. And I did love that they rescued each other within the confines of a book club.
Yeah. Yes.
Because I think that still to this day, book clubs are very hot again with women, and have been since 50 Shades of Grey, which is interesting. But the reason that they're popular and the reason, if you were listening earlier in
I
the
was.
discussion, was that you have a sense of belonging and you have a sense of being able to say what you're feeling and friendship. It's not just study group for a book, but it's like you get to you have a place to belong. And
Yeah.
the commonality between us, that what connects us is a love of reading, but it's also the things that we learn when we read. And I think that
Mhm.
that's really, really
And
great.
I identified with, and I can't remember now who it was, and Audrey says The Second Sex by yes, Simone de Beauvoir. And I
Yes,
talk about there's many books that are talked about, and that's one that gets mentioned at least in the book. Because, well, there's a whole thing, but I won't go into that. But the person who was like, her favorite book club meetings are when like half the people love the book and half the people hate the book. And I agree. Actually, those are my second favorite meetings. My favorite book club meetings are when I walk in the door with an opinion. And because I have listened to what other people have to say, they have changed my opinion by the end of the meeting. I love that.
that's good.
And I actually
That's
met a book club recently because I've been talking to a lot of book clubs, as you can imagine. I met a book club recently and they do a fascinating thing. They, when they first open up, they're like, okay, everybody rate the book from 1 to 5 stars. And then at the end, they do it again and see if people have changed how they
change.
felt about the book, which I think is really so interesting.
I hate stars, but that would be interesting to see
Well,
if
it's a
they've
quick,
changed their
I
mind.
mean, yeah, it's a quick
Yeah,
way. It's a quick
yeah.
way to sort of like, how did maybe it's 1 to 10. I always think 5 is pretty limiting.
No, five. If you get over five, it gets too complicated because then they go, well, if it's a seven or an eight, or maybe it's an eight
See,
and a half,
maybe so,
or it's
maybe
yeah,
so.
you're just like, oh,
But
let's
but
just
I
do it
think
simple.
stars is it's just a quick way to do that, and I thought that was really interesting. The other thing that I was fascinated on my book tour, which I went on a like 11 state 50 event book tour, um, was how long book clubs have been around. At one
Hmm.
of my earliest things, I had 4 adorable women come up and they said, "You wrote us." And I said, "Did I? Do tell." And they're like, "We have been meeting as a book club since 1960." Think of it.
They were
1960.
old.
They
They were in
were
their
old.
80s.
Yeah, they were. And they're still getting together. And they're
Uh-huh.
still, and it's just been this great friendship that has endured over all this time. And then I actually, when I was in the South, I learned of a book club in that particular town. I can't remember the name of it now. It has been meeting as a book club, clearly not with the original members, since for more than 100 years.
Mhm.
I mean, that's just So people, one question I would get from people is like, well, were there really book clubs in the 60s? And the answer is, yep, I
Oh
think
yeah,
there have
there were.
always been book clubs.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know of one that started in 1890. So that's
Yeah.
what my grandmother belonged to. She was not in the 18, she was born in 1895, but
Okay.
when she got to be a teenager, she got to go to that book club. It was part of the community.
That's
And
so
the
cool.
women would do it, and they would read, and it was good. So
Yeah.
I guess maybe that's where I got my love of reading from. Who knows? Okay, I'm not going to be able to ask you our fresh fiction facts because we'll run over really far, but I need you to tell me what can readers expect from you next? Because you're a slow writer, nothing personal.
I am a slow writer and I do have an idea and I have gotten a green light on that idea. And I am probably going to stay in that era. And that is all I can tell you about it right now because I, if I talk about the book out loud to civilians too early, it takes the juice out of it.
No, we don't want the
So
juice.
we don't
Yeah.
want to lose it. We don't want it to lose
No.
the juice.
I mean, how do you feel when people say, because I know the different it's really interesting about history, when we say this book is a historical, because now anything in the 20th century is a historical. You could even say books that were written that were set in the 20 aughts are historical because it's
Really.
been
That's
15
interesting.
years. So how does it feel to be a historical writer when it was only the 1960s?
Well, I mean, it's funny because now it used to be that the technical definition was 100 years. So this
Yeah.
is certainly not 100 years. But in a way it feels right because it was a different world.
Hmm.
It was a very different world. So from that standpoint, yeah, it feels like that's a definition that fits. But the thing that's really, shocking for so many readers, oh yeah, and I never finished my point back then, is how different things were. That's what I was going to say, and I'll do it quickly because I don't want to go too over because I know you're taking your teeth hurt, and I'm sorry. Um, when I was writing the book, I gave the manuscript to another writer friend of mine who's about 20 years younger than me and said, just read it, let me know what you think. And she loved it, but she kept calling me up and she was like, Marie, And I was like, girl, yeah, no, that was a thing. Like the whole, all of the, many of the
Hmm.
things that the women were running up against. She had no idea. And this
Hmm.
was a fairly well-educated person. And so, I'm really happy that this book has had a tremendous response. It just keeps selling and people keep finding it. And it's really reader word of mouth at this point because, I'm home doing my job. Um, but I think one of the things I'm really happy about is that younger generations are learning what their mothers and grandmothers put up with and what they had to do to change things. And it's just really important because these freedoms that we can almost, kind of take for granted sometimes are really young and fresh. And when something's young, it's fragile. And
Yeah.
so you have to protect fragile things.
Okay, so where can readers, to close this part that's recorded, I want to put this out there, where can readers stay in touch with you and be notified of when you finally get to be able to talk about your long-term writing? Uh, we want to stay informed. So how can they do that?
So there's a bunch of ways. I am on Instagram. I am on Facebook. Those are my big social media things. Those are all that I do because it's all I can handle. Um, you also could go to my website, which is mariebostwick.com. And if you scroll down a little bit, it'll be a thing where you can sign up for my newsletter. I actually have two newsletters. I have a monthly um, author newsletter, which is books, 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 and more books, and not just my books. I am a big reader. You have to be if you're going to write. So I always have book recommendations and very book-centric things. So that comes out once a month. And then I have a weekly blog newsletter because, as you mentioned before, I have a blog called Fiercely Marie. It is my lifestyle blog. And it is about all the things that I think make life wonderful, including a lot of recipes and crafts and travel and just general advice for navigating life. For example, this week, my newsletter had an archived post that I had done on 10 ways to combat overwhelm because I was feeling overwhelmed this week. So it was a good one to revisit. So so those are two good ways. I also have you know where you can find me once a month? At Fresh Fiction. On the last Friday of the month, I'm blogging. I do a lot of Q&As with authors who have new books coming out. And so it's women's fiction. And then I also co-host a podcast called the 10-Minute Book Talk with Rachel Linden and Catherine Ray. And we interview a new author for about 10 minutes every week. And that's fun. And you can find that on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube.
Yeah. I didn't know it was on YouTube. I find it on Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram is where it first goes, and then it migrates, I think, later.
And it migrates.
So
it just crawls around.
No, there's a clever assistant who makes those things happen.
Okay. Well, Marie, thank you so much for coming and spending time with us. And just stick around because we're going to have people that are going to ask you questions quietly.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. What do you mean quietly? Like they're going to type them?
No. They're going to ask you, but they're not going to be recorded.
Oh, they're not going to be recorded. Okay.
So it can be things that you say that we won't tell anybody.
Oh, well, I'll have to think of something shocking to say.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.